Welcome to the Sandhills Media Ministry. We hope this production encourages and challenges you to live a more Christ-centered life. Welcome to the Sandhills podcast. We are very excited to talk about the reason for the season. Christmas is right around the corner, and we wanted to have a sit-down conversation with Pastor Jeff about how do we bring Advent with us everywhere we go. How do we handle family dynamics around Christmas? How do we handle finances around Christmas? We address all these questions in this episode, and it is a really fun way to wrap up our season 3 of the Sandhills podcast. Now, we do have something special coming for you closer to Christmas time, and we're excited to share that with you. But the next time that we'll have our 4th season and regular episodes coming out will be in January. If you'd like to know about a topic, or if you would like to hear a topic, please put it in the comments, send us an email. We would love to hear from you. Merry Christmas.
No, the only time you're really going to be free and fulfilled is when, as a created being, you begin to walk in the way that He's created you to operate.
But what you do need to do is just be a faithful representation of what you believe. Live it boldly. Don't hedge on anything, and just simply be who you are for the sake of Christ and the gospel and the church. And don't think about it in terms of like, did I make sure that they understood that I think they're wrong?
In every generation, we need to evangelize the church.
There is no Christian culture. Christianity is the message of God's Son sacrificed on the cross for our salvation.
And the question that we have to ask ourselves is, are we going to choose Him or not?
And I often tell people don't leave church because of God. Mm-hmm. They leave because of other people.
So Christmas is right around the corner.
It is.
It is the time where Mariah Carey is being sung for hours in every department store.
Right.
And if you work in one of those stores, may the Lord bless you and keep you, because I could not handle that.
Hey, can I say something? I love Christmas. I absolutely love. I love the whole thing. I love everything about Christmas. Now, I will say, vocationally, Christmas is not always my favorite time of year. Now, let me unpack that a bit for somebody who's like, listen, I love the birth of Christ. I love all that it does. I love all of the pageantry of Christmas. I love the decorations, though I'm not personally into decorating myself. It's not my joy, but I love when others do it, and I love to be around that. But, as a church, there's always the extra services, the extra time you've got to put in. And so, for people, especially people who love a Christmas Eve, I love Christmas Eve service. I'm going to go and we're going to sing. Like, do you know what a burden it is for the church staff to take the hours to prepare, to pull off, to do? And then when everybody leaves, that we're staying there cleaning up, putting things back in order. And so normally when I hit Christmas, I'm exhausted. And then it's like, okay, back to work on Monday. And so it's like, vocationally, Christmas is actually really hard. So can I just say, love your church staff during Christmas. I mean,
Amen.
Love them, pour out. And if, let me just say this selfishly, I don't even care who, let's imagine you go to another church. You need to, call them, thank them, send them a card, give them a gift, just recognize just how much they work hard.
It is a lot.
So it's one of those things. But that aside, I love Christmas. It's just such a great holiday.
And one of the things that makes it, like you said, it's a very busy season. For a lot of people in the business world, it's the 4th quarter, and it's a ton of work. They're working overtime.
Oh,
They're getting maybe 14 hours off for Christmas. They get half a day Christmas Eve, they get Christmas Day, and you're back.
That's right. The retail world is brutal.
Oh, man.
And if you work retail, again, somebody needs to be loving on you.
Amen.
Encouraging you, hugging you.
Amen. And it's one of the things that I think helps get people through it, at least for me, like when we got all that work and we're setting stuff up. I love Christmas songs.
Yeah.
I think they're so fun.
I do too.
I've got 2 separate Christmas playlists.
Oh, okay.
One of them is a Christmas playlist that's like soft. The fireplace is on. We're cozy. Got some hot chocolate.
Sure.
And then the other one is like Trans-Siberian Orchestra. And
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
like, Christmas, this is amazing. I was wondering, what is your favorite Christmas song?
What's that song about the grandma that got run over by a reindeer?
I think it's Grandma Got Ran Over by a Reindeer. No, I don't think that's it.
No, my favorite Christmas song. It really, and this is funny for me because I knew this question was coming. That's like, what is my favorite Christmas song? And the first one that came to mind was "O Come, Emmanuel." And I've just always loved that. There's just something about the song. It's got first of all a very rich theology, and it's almost got this. It's like a mournful kind of ballad. In many aspects, and yet there's this edge of joy and celebration. So it's a complex song for me emotionally. I absolutely love that song, and I'm not even there's not a version that I love more than others. I love that song. Yeah,
Man, now I feel bad for saying "Sleigh Ride" by Air Supply.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm serious.
Oh,
I play that song so much. It's at least once a day. As soon as Christmas music is culturally acceptable, it's at least once a day.
Oh, that's great.
I love that song.
Did not hear that one coming. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
It's got a rich theology too. That is so funny. Okay. Whew. All right. Why do you think this was something I was thinking about? Why do you think that so many Christmas songs, and kind of on that vein, you have the Christmas hymns that have super rich theology and are just spiritually and soul edifying.
Yeah.
But then so many of the popular Christmas songs are about romance. Why do you think that is?
So for me, and this is Jeff winging this, so to speak. So when you've got this spirit of joy and giving and generosity, now I'm talking about more of a secular view of Christmas, but this is the time when you see somebody in need, you're actually more lenient towards, let's give them a little something, let's help them out, let's buy a gift for somebody, let's give a toy for Toys for Tots and all this. So you've got this where you're in the area of the heart and the brain that you don't normally live in throughout the rest of the year, which would be great if you did.
Yeah.
But you're totally embracing this generosity, this external showing of love. I think the very next natural, normal, even almost God-inspired step is to think about how much I love other people. So I'm showing love to strangers I wouldn't normally show. So my love has risen to a point where now it's overflowing to people I wouldn't normally show love to. Those who are closest to me then are also receiving an overflow. And I think a natural part of love in our society is to think about, the member of the opposite sex that you have been attracted to, whether you're single or married. And it's just like it increases that feeling of love. And so I think the same thing is true in the art world. And so the shows that you put on TV, not to mention the obvious fame of the Hallmark Channel during Christmas, and every romance that, even though you could print the storyline exactly, like you could tell me what the next Hallmark movie will be about before it's even created or made, and yet people love it and they eat it up. And I'll be honest with you, and you can't tell anybody this for our podcast, right? That I like the Hallmark stuff. Like when I watch those with my wife, and I don't watch a lot of them, but when I do, I'm like, how does this get me? It still gets me. I still like this. Like my wife's over there crying, and I would love to mock her if it weren't for the tears in my own eyes. So
if I could see her through the tears,
if I could see her through my open weeping, I would tell her, "You're so foolish." Yeah, no, I think it's a natural part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a fantastic. I literally wrote that to the side as we were getting ready for this. So that was totally off the cuff. And for a totally off the cuff answer, that was solid. That was like, you were saying that, I'm like, that is so true. That's so good. What's one of your favorite Christmas memories?
So I think for me, one of my favorite memories was growing up in Missouri. And so I used to live in Missouri and Nebraska in the Midwest when I was growing up. And my grandparents lived in Clinton, Missouri. And they're just good country folk, and we would everybody would amass there. So my dad has 3 brothers, so there's 4 men in the family, 4 sons. That's all my grandma had, and no daughters. And so we would all gather at the home, and my uncles are just crazy fun people. Like I just connect with them, and I'm just gonna be real with you. They do not share my convictions when it comes to Christianity, and yet I love them to death. And then they get married. They've got their wives, and then I love their wives, and then they have kids, and those are my cousins, and we would all gather, and we would just sleep as a mass in this home where every inch of floor space is taken up with mattresses and stuff. And then during the day we're going out and we're shopping and we're looking at Christmas lights, and Grandma's cooking all the time. And I mean, she was just in her element there, and she's making this delicious stuff. We're having these wonderful dinners. We're staying up late playing cards. We're watching Christmas movies. There's music playing. I like everything about this. It was just so much fun. And so now go to tie into another thing. It's not that at all now, right? So now family members have passed, and everybody's older, and families move different directions. And so there's this thing about me where there's a part of where you really appreciate, like Lord, thank you for that season. But things are absolutely different now. And this is where you have to make a choice. And so this goes back to something we talked about in the Thanksgiving episode was like if you just sit there and lament that things aren't like they used to be, every holiday, every Christmas from this point forward is just going to be miserable. And you're the problem. And I would say that to myself as well. Like if you go in like, I miss that, like my mom isn't here anymore. And I miss that we're not gathering anymore. My grandparents have passed. I miss, like, okay, yeah, those were great. So enjoy that for what it was. And so, but now my attitude is this. Okay, this Christmas, and I'll be honest with you, even still, I'm not quite sure what this Christmas is going to look like yet. We've got some different dynamics now. But I'm like, okay, if it's going to be a good Christmas, I have to make that choice. So I'll be honest. I don't care where we are. I don't care whose house it's at. I don't care where we're eating. It's going to be Christmas. I'm going to be off. I'm going to be with my family. I'm buying gifts for people I love. I can't affect how they look at each other and view all this. But for my part, I'm just going to enjoy this holiday. And so whatever the thing is this year, that's my new tradition for this year. And we're just going to love it.
Nice. One of my my favorite ones was really my dad was in the Army, as you know, still is in the Army. And he was in Iraq in the early 2000s after the invasion of Iraq. And he wasn't going to be able to come home for my birthday or for Christmas or anything. And that was really sad. It was like kind of the first Christmas without Dad. And so that was really hard to think about. But he actually, and this is kind of weird, ended up getting bit by this like sand parasite.
Wow.
Yeah. That like burrowed into his skin and then was like reproducing in his bloodstream.
Oh my goodness.
And so he had to get like chemo to flush out the parasite. So they had to emergency evacuate him to Washington, D.C. to Walter Reed. And we got to be with him for the holidays. And so that was like, and it was like tough, obviously he's going through it, and he's, but to see him and to know we were together as a family again and to be that was my first time in DC as far as I can remember, and seeing it all with the Christmas lights everywhere. And then my dad and I got to go to the White House to watch the American Ballet Company perform the Nutcracker in the White House with George W. Bush and his wife.
That's crazy.
And they had this massive gingerbread house replica of the White House.
Oh my goodness. That's amazing.
It was insane. So that was one of my favorite memories.
I'm not sure your dad's, but yeah. By the way, the whole opening of that sounds like a movie plot. I mean,
I know, right?
That's crazy.
Yeah. That could be a Hallmark movie.
Well, yes, it could.
Call me, Hallmark. We can make this work. Get some extra cash. There we go. What do you think is the number one thing that people worry about over Christmas?
Okay, so I was thinking about this, and I know we're going to end up in one area talking about this, which we should. But for me, I just wonder if, and I just say this because of what I've heard. This hasn't been my personal experience, but I think many people are just worried about their emotions during Christmas. I think they're worried about being sad or lonely or discouraged, and I think this ties more into some of our very natural fears than anything else. And Christmas just tends to bring that out, because if it really is the time of year when it's supposed to be about joy and fun and laughter, almost everybody can think, yeah, but it's not going to be that way for me. And it's not going to be that way this year. And now I don't have, Aunt so-and-so, or I'm going through a hard time, or I just lost my job and I don't have the money. And, so that I think the emotional toil that they're going to experience is what they really fear. So I think they're afraid of sadness and loss, or processing that. And again, I would just say, now this is like my pastoral side, would be like, you don't have to dismiss the pain of life. You can't. Nobody can actually do that, but you can understand that, and yet you can still choose to be the one who brings joy into the situation. So life is really hard for you right now, but what if you could make it a really joyous time for other people? Like, even though you're going through something difficult, you're going to gather at a place where everybody else has got that too. What if you were the joy bringer in the midst of this? And so, while I think the biggest worry is probably their emotional struggle during Christmas, my challenge would be, make it different. You be the one who makes it different for everybody else. Yes, you're going through your own pain. You're not denying that. But you can make a choice that will bless others.
Yeah. I was fascinated because that was what I expected to see when I looked up number one worry Christmas on Google, to find out what people were thinking. Yeah. And I was surprised to see that 48 to 60% of people, now that's coming from Lending Tree, Fox, and The Observer, all came up with numbers within that frame.
Right.
But 48 to 60% of Americans dread the holidays because of finances.
Yes, yeah.
And I feel like I had kind of known that in the back of my mind, maybe because there's so much commercialization of it.
Right, sure.
But I didn't realize that it was that pervasive,
Right.
that you look at someone and the odds are good, and you flip a coin and they're dreading their finances this time of year.
That's right.
And 30% said that they lose sleep at night because of the anxiety associated with the financial burden of Christmas.
Right.
I was shocked at that. I had no idea that not only was it that pervasive, but it was that devastating that you're laying awake at night so consumed with the idea of, how am I going to pay for this?
Right, sure.
How do those statistics impact the meaning of Christmas in our culture?
Well, so obviously the commercialization of this time of year is has caused a problem in the church. I mean, we don't want to lose sight of what this is really all about as a season. But if I could speak to the statistics for a moment, and I used to be a part of that statistic. I don't know that I really feared, Christmas and the budgeting part or the financial part, but I think, we were able to solve it. And I like the solution is so stinking easy. Like I can solve this for everybody right now, just in a few principles, if I could. So one is get on a budget. So like I know people, we're kind of on a budget. Like you can't be kind of on a budget. You got to be on a real budget. And fortunately, like our church, we use the Dave Ramsey stuff, the Financial Peace University. Totally recommend that to people. But here's the great news: if you spend your whole year preparing for Christmas, and you can adjust it to your income, just wherever you're at. This is what we've got for Christmas. And there were a number of years where we were like, okay, this is what we're going to have for Christmas. We got there, we had that amount of money, and then you're limited, right? So you're sitting there going, well, yeah, but we can't afford to give our kids all the, okay, stop. You're setting really weird expectations. Like your kids aren't sitting there thinking dollar amounts. Like I need to be able to, if my parents don't drop $1,000 on me this Christmas, do they even love me? Like they're not,
man.
like when they're, yeah, wouldn't that be great? Yeah.
Wow.
We've never spent that much on our kids ever. But this idea that you have to provide some sort of weird Christmas for your kids. So when we were younger and didn't have much money, we bought a bunch of smaller gifts. And so, dollar wise, we weren't giving our kids a lot of dollar value for their gifts, but we gave them a bunch of gifts. They were still in the realm of things that they liked. One of the things, like, I remember my son liked Legos, and I would have loved to have gotten him, like, an X-Wing or a Millennium Falcon. I'll be honest, I may have
The Death Star.
Yeah, it might have just been for me that I would have wanted to do that. But we couldn't afford any. They were hundreds of dollars for a Lego toy, and you couldn't justify that. But you can buy these little, like, you could buy a spaceship, and I could get that for like $10 or $15. And, I could do the same thing over here, and I could get him like a couple of those, and that would be like, a couple of things that were in the same realm, but they weren't the price tag. So I would say set a budget. Don't worry about not being able to give your kids the Christmas that you want to give them. And I would say this too. You don't have to match what other people are giving you. So if you have a family member who has more money than you, and every year Uncle so-and-so or Aunt so-and-so is going to give you this big gift, and you're like, I gotta match that. I gotta pay that back. Okay, now you've missed the point of Christmas. Like this is not about like I'm trying to keep up with people in their gift giving. If Uncle so-and-so gives you something, he's going to give you something. You're like, I don't have any money. You know what you could do? There's this way to create meaningful gifts that are very cheap. Like, make a calendar for Uncle so-and-so that has pictures of, great moments you guys have had together. It's going to cost you, probably less than $20 to do that. It's going to take some effort to put together. But you want to talk about meaningful. I mean, that's the kind of thing. That's a real gift, that you could really spend some time with them. Remembering something that's beautiful. So don't try to keep up with that. Don't worry about giving small gifts. And don't feel like you have to give a gift to everybody that gives you a gift. That was something we had to break ourselves of as well. Is that, well, so-and-sos are going to give us a gift. We've got to get them something. Like, no, you don't. No, you don't. Well, they're going to be offended. I got to manage my life, again, like if they're going to give me something, I'll tell you what, let's get them a card and let's just write in there some stories or some great things about how much they've blessed us. Let them, you can think of a different way to do this rather than getting caught up in like, I have to take on this unbelievable financial burden. I think that's unwise.
Yeah. That is great advice for looking at how to combat those anxieties, because one of the things that I think that we've really missed is that mindset of, let me show someone how much I love them. And it doesn't have to be through a material thing. It can be through something literally affirming the fact that I love them. One of the cool things that as you were saying that, I was thinking about this. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking about that last minute gift idea, before Christmas and coming up around the corner, as you're thinking about that, one of the cool things I've seen is you can go online and you can make, it's not a comic book, but it's an illustrated story of a favorite memory with them. And you can make it where like, yeah, I was a little kid here and they were, or you talk about a trip that you guys took and they'll illustrate it for you and they'll write it. And it's a really cool little book that you can give someone of a favorite memory. And like, I know if I got that, I'd be crying and be like, this is so beautiful. Thank you. I didn't know you liked that moment.
That's great.
And so there are so many ways, or even there's one time I got a card that was just so beautifully written. I'm like, this is, there's no cash inside. I'm not like, shaking it, trying to see if anything falls out.
Yeah.
But I was like, this is so, and I've kept it. It's still in I know exactly where it is in my house. And it's so fun to open it and read it and be like, wow, what a beautiful memory.
Yeah.
And that's something that's literally priceless.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think if you're just creative, you can do things differently. I think too, part of this ties into the love languages. So that book, The 5 Love Languages, from years ago, was this idea that people are wired different. Like for me, like if you give me a gift, like, oh, that's great, thank you. Like I'm just not a gift guy. I mean, I'm glad to receive them and I love to give them, but it's just not it doesn't, I'm a words of affirmation kind of guy. And so like if you literally took the time to write in a card about something I've done for you in your life or blessed you in your life or a memory we've made together and how special that is to you, that will do way more for me than you going out and get me the latest, a tool that I've been wanting to get,
Right.
I don't always need that. No, but I have friends though. And I have one friend in particular who I love, like my best friend. He loves gifts. And so if you go out of your way to get him something, but for him, it's not a dollar amount. It's just that you thought about him and it's in something that he loves. I mean, I'll never forget one of the best gifts I ever gave my wife was actually on an anniversary. During our wedding, we had a love song we loved, and she sang the love song to me as a surprise in the midst of our wedding. I was bawling like a
Oh,
good
man.
boy. It was great. It was
Jeez.
an amazing time.
Another Hallmark
I know
movie.
it was a
There.
Hallmark, yeah, totally Hallmark moment. And so we still had that sheet music from that performance,
man.
and so I got it out. I located there was a particular artist that sang it, and we loved their stuff. I found through her agent that she was still out there doing shows, and so I contacted the agency. And I said, could you get her to sign this? And they did. And so I sent it to the artist. She signed it,
What?
said, wishing you another happy 20 years or something like that.
Oh,
and so here's the
man.
thing. It didn't cost me anything more than postage. I mean, literally, and some forethought. And so when I got it back, I framed it and I gave it to her. And I'll never forget, like when she opened it, she literally was stunned. Like, what am I looking at here?
Yeah.
And I was like, this is our sheet music
Wow.
from our wedding, the song you sang to me, signed by the artist that we loved who did that. And it was just one of those. And
It's so beautiful.
So thanks a lot. So guys,
Oh, man.
next on you.
I'm taking notes.
Yeah.
I'm like, you got to find that song.
But so now bring that into Christmas, this idea that it doesn't have to cost a lot. If you're just creative, you can come up with some really cool stuff really affordably.
And you know what's interesting? All the stories we're sharing about some of our best memories and the things that we valued the most and meant the most to us have $0.
That's right. Yeah. It's not
You know what I
connected
mean?
to-
Like,
yeah.
it's not connected. Like, I'm not talking about the time that my parents got me a PlayStation 2.
Okay. Now hold on.
Now, that was revolutionary at the time. It was insane. But,
great.
but that doesn't become your favorite memory. The
Right.
material thing won't become your favorite memory, but the love you show to someone, you can bank on that becoming a favorite memory.
Okay, now I do want to say I will never forget when I first got the Atari 2600.
That's a historic moment.
That is, I was like 6. It was a big moment in my life. But other than that, okay, but let me if you were to ask, how did we get here? Like, how did we get to people just spending so much? Okay,
Yeah.
so maybe part of that is kind of the Madison Avenue
Right.
sales pitches, and now we're convinced that spending money is how you do Christmas. But I kind of think we got here almost innocently. That this idea that now we're going back to the Christian principle that we have been given the greatest gift ever at extreme cost, at extreme sacrifice by the Lord. So here Jesus has given us his life. We're completely unworthy, completely undeserving, and yet he has, if you want to use our term, spent so much to purchase for us, this gift. And when people enter into that, I think there's a part of that residual that's within us. It's part of the innate nature of man, maybe even unidentified, unarticulated, and people inside the faith or outside the faith. But there's something that captures them in this moment, and maybe it's worked its way subtly into songs, even secular songs, with the extravagance of love, the extravagance of gift, whatever. And I think that there's this part of this that people come by naturally. So if somebody were to say, I don't know why I do this, but I way overspend every year and I can't explain it. And I'd say, well, I think actually it lies in the origins of Christmas. the thing I would just caution is that was not God's intent, that we would
Right.
try in some financial way to replicate, His gift. But I do kind of understand it.
Yeah. That there would be this innate desire
Right.
to lavishly love somebody.
Right.
We just got to do it wisely.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think one of the things as we're looking at how to combat greed, and it's clearly not wrong to give gifts.
No,
It's
yeah, I
wrong
agree.
to irresponsibly give gifts.
That's right.
But I think one of the best ways that we can combat greed in our society as believers is by celebrating Advent and what that is. And so what do you think the church's responsibility is in celebrating Advent?
That's a great question. So I grew up in a church that was very liturgical. And so we had seasons of year where you would do various things, and one of those was Advent. So Advent is, it's 4 weeks. We're going to be talking about aspects of Christmas, and it's used as not just a celebration time. It's used as a teaching tool. And historically, that's what it was in the church, is that we were going to take 4 weeks to focus on different aspects of, joy and love and things like that. And then we'll wrap them around the Christmas story, and we'll use them as teaching tools in the church, so that by the time we get to the celebration of the birth of Christ, we understand the bigger picture of what it's all about. And so I would say conceptually, even for a modern church like ours, which is not liturgical in how we do things, we have actually seized Advent almost every year. I mean, it just seems like we keep coming back to it. And I think for the same reasons that, we need to pause every year. Let me show you the other side for a second. So I had a friend of mine that was teaching through the book of Esther one year, and he was coming up on Christmas, and so he and I were speaking, and so I said, so in your church, what are you going to be, what parts of the Christmas story are you going to be doing, and how are you doing that, and how many weeks are you going to preach on Christmas? And he said, oh, well, I'm not going to stop for Christmas at all. I've been teaching through the book of Esther. I'm just going to keep on going. And
Wow.
I was like, do you think your people want to hear about Esther during Christmas? I mean,
We're skipping Christmas.
yeah. And,
Bomb.
yeah, my friend's name was Ebenezer. And so, I was just like, what are you doing? And so he didn't. I mean, he preached through Esther. He never stopped. And he received some interesting feedback from his congregation.
A lot of emails.
Yeah, a lot of emails. And so here's the thing, I think, with us, like the idea of capturing Advent, to say everybody wants to hear about the birth of Christ. Everybody wants to know what surrounds that. And so when you come back to the basics of Advent, about educating people about what the season's about, and then celebrating what has actually occurred. I mean, I think if you can combine those two elements, that's the importance of Advent. And I think it's both corporate in the church, and I think it's personal. Like for me, if you're a Christian at home, like you don't have to adopt Advent as like, we're going to take 4 weeks and we're going to do the Advent candle or something like that. Or like, you can do all those things. I think they're great. But if you'll at the very least, think we need to take a season as a family where we celebrate, we remember, we educate ourselves and our kids about, what this is all about. And then I think you can even extrapolate from that to say, like if you have non-believing family at Christmas, and it's just always been a part of everybody's life, probably, even if you're a Christian. It's hardly ever do you have a fully Christian family. If you do, I'm really envious of you. I don't know what that's like. That's beautiful.
Nice.
Yeah, nice. But what we do try to do is now think about, how can I bring a little bit of Advent into my family? And so when we're there, if they don't normally read the Christmas story, can I ask on Christmas morning, hey, before we open gifts, would you mind if I read a chapter from the book of Matthew and just talked about, this great thing that's happened? I think there's a part of that where it's kind of bringing Advent into your family, or even on Christmas Eve. Hey, how would you guys feel about going to a church service? And even though almost nobody will go with you, you may have that one cousin or aunt or uncle that's like, oh, I'd go with you.
Yeah.
Now, I do understand there's some weird family dynamics. I was just talking to somebody like today that was saying they have Catholic family members and they're Protestant. And so they're like, hey, will you go to Mass with us? And they're like, I don't know if I want to go to Mass.
It's a lot of standing and sitting and kneeling and standing.
Yeah. And then when they come to their house, they're like, hey, do you want to go to our church with us? And they're like, oh, we'd rather go to a Catholic church. So I know there's dynamics there, but the season of Advent, I think, is valuable. Personally, corporately, we should embrace it.
Yeah. I loved what you said there, is how do I, you brought up the concept, how do I bring Advent up into this? And I think one of the things that is so beautiful about being a Christian and having the indwelling of the Holy Spirit and the ability to share this story and be the church to people is that we can approach going into work, going into family dynamics, going to the gas station. How can I bring Advent with me? How can I bring this message and this story? Because everyone's thinking about it, whether they really want to admit it or not. Everyone knows what Christmas is about. It's not, as much as the culture tries to dissuade us from the origins of Christ Mass. They can't escape it. And there's so many, I had a friend who's a pastor, a young pastor like me, and he said, I'm always excited for Christmas because I get to see my CEOs. And I was like, you're what? And he's like, my Christmas and Easter only families. And he goes, because I've got a strategic time where they can't escape it.
That's right.
I'm talking about it,
Right.
and they're going to hear it.
No, I love it. That's a beautiful thing. Yeah. You know, I was thinking when you said this too, so in a lot of stores, of course, they don't let them say Merry Christmas because it's a very Christian thing. So they say Happy Holidays. And a lot of times Christians will be like, they'll return with, somebody says Happy Holidays, you'll return with, Merry Christmas. If you do that, don't be snarky about it, because I've seen people who will do like, somebody will say Happy Holidays and be like, no, Merry Christmas.
No, you're wrong.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, dude, now you sound like an idiot. Just kind of, if you're going to say Merry Christmas, which I encourage every Christian to do, use that as your mantra, because you really mean I am celebrating the advent of Christ. But this idea, just don't be snarky about it. Just return it with love and joy and move on.
Right, because there are other holidays happening around that time. So if they want to say that, don't belittle them for what could be their sincere faith. You know what I mean?
Especially when you go to invite them to church later, and they're like, you're actually a jerk. I don't want to go.
They're like, weren't you the guy that yelled at the person in the store?
Yeah, where do you go to church? I never want to go there.
Never going. And the way that I've done that is I always just say Merry Christmas first. And if they say Happy Holidays, I say thank you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, just be like, jolly about it.
Yeah, being winsome.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
As we kind of wrap up this podcast on Christmas and getting ready for this time of year and having these conversations and having that holly jolly mentality and being light to the world, if you could give one piece of advice to people over the holidays and then one comfort for people over the holidays, what would they be?
Okay, so my piece of advice would be I know this sounds ridiculous. Of course, I would say this as a pastor and as a Christian. Keep Jesus in the middle of the whole thing. Like, that would be my advice, is just keep Jesus in the middle of the whole thing. And then, my word of comfort or encouragement would be, like, Christmas will probably never match your ideal. Like, there's a Christmas that waits for us in a different world. And when we go to that world, our home world, Christmas is going to be a whole new thing. So there's a part of this where just resolve within yourself. In some way, it will always fail to meet my expectations. But I can either let that push me towards bitterness, or I can let that be a seed of hope that reminds me, though this situation, this relationship, or whatever, it's not going to measure up. It's okay. There's a better Christmas coming. And so much as I have opportunity, I'm going to be the center of love and joy and grace and gratitude. Like as far as I'm concerned, Christmas is going to be amazing for those around me because I'm choosing to be that person.
Man, choose to be that person. Bring Advent with you. Thank you so much for sitting down and talking to us about walking through Christmas and repping up and gearing up for all the conversations that'll happen. And I'm just excited to get to celebrate Christmas here at Sandhills and enjoy working with you. And Merry Christmas, Jeff.
Merry Christmas, John.
Thanks. Thank you for tuning in to this production from Sandhills Media Ministry. This episode was produced and hosted by John Dabeck. Audio mixing and camera work by Sean Weigner. Post-production by Erich Weigner. And special thanks to our guest and lead pastor, Jeff Philpott. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please consider supporting us through liking, subscribing, and sharing on your social media. It does more than you know to fuel this project. If you'd like to know more about Sandhills or join us on a Sunday, you can do so at sandhillschurch.org.